Yeah, for me, I deal in the currency of conversions. I don't care if we get 1 million impressions and no registrations. That for me, I take that back to my CFO and he'd sort of walk me through the door, walk me out the door. So it's got to be about what is this getting? Where's my bang for my buck? What am I doing in terms of the benefits that I'm offering? And most importantly, what are the conversions? What does that look like in terms of the registrations? But more importantly, the people that are turning up on site.
So today I kind of wanted to pick your guys' brain into what Automechanika allows you to do outside of just the stand, right? Is that a lot of people will kind of rock up and that's kind of their mind space. They've got the stand set up, they've got the brochures, but what do most exhibitors not realise that is actually available to them when they sign up?
I think maybe they don't realise, we try to be really good at articulating exactly what's included for an exhibitor, but as soon as someone books for the show, their marketing campaign starts, and that can include a multitude of different things. Obviously, we've got quite a lot of digital elements, printed things, and some other bits and pieces as well. So it's not really just about the 3 days that they'll be exhibiting at the exhibition for. It's, what we can do to drum up exposure for them beforehand and kind of really build that excitement so that our visitors are really planning to come and see them at the show, actually.
And I think Joe's right. I think the culmination of the activation is obviously those 3 days. And for us, and certainly as a marketing person, once the contract is in, the kind of promotion begins, right? And I think it's really, really important to have a plan around the pre-show activation phase. So if you're booking, 5 months out, it's still really, really important to embrace some of the tools that we provide our exhibitors and sponsors. We run a very successful what's called a co-marketing program where we essentially give digital assets, we offer advice, we give them access to partners, to PR agencies around how they could maximise their presence at the show. Now, the great thing about this is it's all free of charge. And essentially, the more information that I get from me and my team in terms of content creation, telling us about their news, telling us about what they've been doing on the stand, the more successful their show is going to be. I can certainly get people to the entrance, but what I can't do so well is get people to the individual exhibitor stands. So for us to be able to have that almost sort of matrimony with the exhibitor, with that partnership, 100% they will have a much more successful time at Automechanika.
Yeah, I like that. And that's something that I'd kind of grasped from that exhibitor day, was that you'd kind of mentioned that the fact that a lot of the work that Automechanika does to promote the show, which is huge. You guys have a bigger turnout this year than ever. So obviously that's all working. But when it comes to exhibitors, maybe that the focus is more on logistics, getting people there, maybe doing the accommodation, whereas that run up to the exhibition probably could be a lot more successful if they kind of tapped into that. So what are the kind of suggestions that you would have in terms of that run up, and how would the co-partnership kind of work in that?
I think it's about, well, first off, and it's very obvious, and this is not rocket science, but it's about making sure that you're announcing your presence early. I think it's really, really important that our exhibitors engage with their current customer base, but also their prospects, right? I think it's really, really important that, there's many, many different reasons why people should exhibit at a show, right? One of the big reasons that we see is that we want to meet with existing clients. We want to tell them about our new products. We want to tell them about all these amazing demos, potentially, that we have on the stand, but also to the people that are sort of, in the market to see what's going on. A lot of our exhibitors will have prospect databases that are at various stages of the sort of lead process. And it's really, really important that they engage with those people, because that's where they can come and see them. They don't have to travel to their showroom. They can see everything about what they're doing under one roof. And I think that's really, really important in how we can create that miss out event. Other advice I would offer them is make sure you're booking those meetings in advance. Make sure that your stand is catered for what is to come in terms of your customers. And also, I think a little sort of takeaway is make sure that your stand is appealing. We looked at and heard about from the exhibitors there about how, not to exhibit, right? But we need to make sure that, for those exhibitors, certainly for the first time exhibitors, that they have interactive stands, that there are competitions, that it does create that curiosity when people are walking by a stand, that you can then sort of grab them and start an ice-breaking conversation.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think that a lot of people or exhibitors can go down the route of, we're going to show up, this is going to be the offering. And sometimes they don't actually go into the fact that there are people and prospects in different parts of the funnel right now. Maybe some are more engaged. Like, for example, there was an ADAS equipment company, and there's two sides of the coin there, isn't there? Is that you're going to see people on the day that are interested now in adopting ADAS and bringing the ADAS kit into their workshop, but there's other people that are probably just going to want to maybe expand their boards, for example. So there's two different messages for two different audience. So you're not actually going in there with a core message. So I guess that when it comes to digital and having that kind of backup of the email and the promotion that you do outside of the event, you can guide that journey a bit better online digitally. So in terms of, you just mentioned there making sure that your stand's appealing, and I know that you mentioned kind of like engagement techniques on what you do at the stand. Is there anything that Automechanika kind of offers in terms of how to promote that? So I've got this happening on the stand, this happening on the stand. I know that you guys had sent something out to us. So can you go into that, how exhibitors can actually promote that?
So along obviously with the exhibitor day and everything that Nick was just kind of talking about, another thing that I think is quite unique to Messe Frankfurt UK, Automechanika Birmingham, is the stand announcement forms, which you also kind of alluded to. But the more that you tell us about what you're doing on your stand there, obviously the more that we can kind of promote that. So we use that through quite a lot of channels. We've recently just had the pre-event guide drop, where we talk about specific giveaways that companies are having on their stands, or any celebrity appearances that might be happening as well. So in terms of using what channels, we've obviously got quite a lot of channels that we can push that messaging out from, and then we kind of encourage the exhibitor as well to push that out to their channels. We're also always here to have a kind of consultative approach with the exhibitors in conjunction with everything that we do as a standard across the board. If someone is particularly struggling with how they might be able to get the messaging out for something, we can also work on a bit more of a bespoke option for them, depending on what their needs are. But I think really the most important thing that an exhibitor needs to do is figure out what their objectives are ahead of the event, so then it can be successful for them. And once you've got those objectives defined, everything that you're doing is so streamlined in terms of your participation at the event, and that's what's going to make it more successful. And I think really that is to get exhibitors to think like that. The fact that Messe Frankfurt UK / Automechanika Birmingham puts on this exhibitor day, that's the 100% reason. And I think that everyone who walked away from it, whether you're a new time exhibitor or having done it for quite a few years, everyone took really good information away from it. Hopefully you did too.
I did. I think for us, like, we were looking at our stand design and we were like, oh, we can make this fancy, we can do that. And we got it back and we kind of looked at it and we said, okay, but what's the actual like end result here? What are we actually trying to achieve with the stand? You can have things like floating and make it do backflips, but if you don't have that objective that, okay, well, we want this many sign-ups, or we want to do this amount of leads during that day, and how do we actually get that to work on the stand? It's almost like a different way, because online, I don't want to say it's simple, but it's essentially you have the channel that you're driving the traffic from, drive that to a landing page, that landing page will then convert them to XYZ, and you're essentially doing that in real life, aren't you? Is that like the same conversion techniques that you'd use in a landing page to say, okay, well, this title works to get more clicks or get more people actually going through that process. You then have that with the stand, which is like, okay, if I put this podium there with a touchscreen, is that going to make people actually engage, or is that going to cause a barrier for them to actually not come on the stand? And I think that that's been quite an interesting way to look at it, and the exhibitor day definitely helped in terms of thinking in that way, and the different types of customers that are going to come beyond just what like Nick referred to, which was different prospects that you have in the funnel already, but also the different types of people that you're just going to get in the event, from the people that are just browsing to the people that may be actively interested in your product but maybe don't know your brand, for example. So there's so many different kind of customers that you're coming up against that you probably don't even realize, right? And kind of framing it that way so that it is more of a marketing effort more than anything else. So
and I think actually looking at that, it shows that I suppose digital marketing plays an almost sort of a multiplier role in what we're trying to do. So I'm trying to educate our exhibitors that by doing social posts, by emailing customers, by having our email signatures on there, the emails, by looking at and exploring paid media campaigns. But I suppose more importantly, piggybacking off what I'm doing, I think where we're slightly different to other event organisers, that we're very transparent, we're very visible. We talk to our clients every day. Last week only we had what we call a sort of co-marketing call day, where everyone in the company, right, picked up the phone and actually engaged with our exhibitors, got some really good feedback, helped educate in terms of how to write plans and how to make sure that things are moving in the right direction, again, to make sure that they are having a memorable experience with us. There's nothing better that we like as show organisers to be able to surprise and delight our customers. So that for us is really, really important.
No, and I think that shows. I mean, you guys have been nothing but warm every time that I've been at Automechanika with a client, and then also as now a standalone business, and it's definitely come through each time that you're super approachable. So in terms of that, like you did mention that digital is kind of the multiplier for the event, and I think during the series is essentially what we're trying to lay out, is that there's a lot of work to be done before, during and after digitally to actually make the most of this event. So when you mentioned that you're helping customers with how to write plans, what is the kind of framework that you guys are giving out in order to help them kind of move from that?
I think for me, it's I say, I've got a structure in place where, when I write my own marketing plans internally, I know kind of, because I've got lots of data historically, so I kind of know what works and what doesn't. So we sort of talk about how to structure their sort of digital marketing plans in terms of the channels. What are those, you touched on KPIs earlier, what do they want to achieve? Is it leads? Is it visibility? Is it partnerships? So there's lots of different elements, and whatever sort of thing that they're choosing, whether it be leads, then we look at how my growth marketing campaigns can potentially aid their campaigns, and just giving them snapshots. Now, I'm obviously not going to give the crown jewels away, but what I will do is be able to sort of point them in the right direction in terms of channels that I've used that have worked in the past, ad formats that I've used in the past that may or may not work. We're a great believer in testing, right? And making sure that once we've tested and once we've optimized, we can share the success stories. So, if it's a LinkedIn campaign, is it the spotlight ad that's generating those clicks? Or actually, is it the video ads that we've just created that actually, have made us, more, pop out of the page, if you like? Something that we're trialing at the moment is some sort of generative AI creatives within our paid media campaigns. And again, just telling, I was on the phone to an exhibitor yesterday, and I was sort of telling them, we're experimenting with this AI campaign. Again, I will share the results once they're ready. But again, they were really interested in terms of, oh gosh, I'm not sure if our brand would take that. But again, it's just being able to push the dial a little bit and then understand and share the successes and kind of what works for us and what doesn't.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that, like you say, you guys do have a lot of data at a scale that it's quite possible that some smaller exhibitors just don't quite have their hands on. And that's a huge valuable resource. Going into the AI one, just as a completely selfish thing though, is that video generative AI, or are you treating it with
it's static images at the moment. I mean, video is the next stage. I mean, I'm lucky in that we've got a lot of video that we use, right, from sort of past shows, from sort of exhibitors that help us with that sort of journey. But I think for us, AI video is probably the next stage. But we'd probably look to try it probably on our next show, which will be the UK Garage and Body Shop event in June of next year. But yeah, it's super exciting, right? And hopefully my passion is coming across. But the more I can help our exhibitors, the better.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the tagline for this video, right? But no, I would say that definitely comes across. And then going into digital, we've kind of gone in before the event, right? So they've got the prospects that are already in their funnel. They've got the different people that are going to come during the day, and then obviously what they can do into the lead up in terms of Automechanika announcing that in the digital guide or the stand announcements. What do you see kind of successful on the day in terms of digital engagement?
I think it's a good question. I think a few conversations that I'm having at the moment are around influencer engagement. So a lot of sort of influencers, some of the bigger stands are sort of bringing sort of celebrity racing drivers. And it's around how once you sort of entertain that lead or you meet someone, what are you doing with that lead? How are you categorizing them? What does that follow-up process look like? because ultimately we want all of our exhibitors to be able to measure their ROI, because it helps us when we come to conversations about what's next. So, things like, what are they bringing? I think it's really, really important. Are there exclusive deals and discounts that, for digital, you could say, look, this is actually only going to be at the show. So again, it's really giving as many reasons as possible, and then spreading that across your digital channels about why people should be coming to your stand and why your customers should be seeing you.
Yeah, I think the topic of influencers as well is quite prevalent, isn't it, in terms of how to use them. I think, just from your perspective, how would you say in terms of that audience match? Because sometimes we can get somebody that's almost like a general celebrity, but it could be that the actual interest of the audience is slightly skewed. So there could be a way that slightly turns into a different approach that doesn't quite lead to that lead generation, like you mentioned.
Yeah, I think I would like to pride ourselves in the fact that we work with a lot of micro influencers, so sort of respected body shop influencers or respected detailing influencers that don't have 100,000 followers, but have 5,000 followers that are engaging with them on a daily basis, right? So the more comments, the more interactions they're getting, the more engagement they're getting, that's where I see success. And again, going back to the measurement piece, we do measure those influencers. We do give them sort of unique codes so that we know, once they're posting, and again, it's got to be original content, the more sort of take up we're getting, the more registrations that are happening.
No, that's perfect. I think a lot of people think, oh, we've got to go bigger, better. And, they obviously see the vanity metrics in terms of, oh, well, this person's got this many views or this many likes. But having a really condensed, engaged audience is how you're going to drive the most call to action, right? Is that when somebody says, okay, I recommend this, they already trust that person. Yeah,
for me, I deal in the currency of conversions. I don't care if we get 1 million impressions and no registrations. That for me, I take that back to my CFO and he'd sort of walk me through the door, walk me out the door. So it's got to be about, what is this getting? Where's my bang for my buck? What am I doing in terms of the benefits that I'm offering? And most importantly, what are the conversions? What does that look like in terms of the registrations? But more importantly, the people that are turning up on site.
Exactly. I mean, I was going to clap as you said that, but I think that the camera would have gone to me if that happened. So, but exactly, it's all about conversions. And I think that a lot of the times we can go to exhibitions, spend a lot of money, and maybe we haven't put, for example, that simple link in that we're actually tracking the things that we've done around the event to actually see if that's impacted at all, so that we can use it in the next exhibition. Just going into that then, I know that obviously you guys have the lead platform, so you scan the leads on the day. In terms of conversions and kind of working that, how do you guys see exhibitors using the platform?
I guess it depends on the exhibiting company and what their processes are after. Obviously, with the setting out of the objectives at the start, that will mean that they'll have the processes in place, hopefully, to be able to deal with that data afterwards as well. But obviously, everyone should be following up immediately, and whatever medium that looks like, if they're having post-event, if they're planning meetings to go out to their end user themselves directly, or if they're planning to send, dedicated emails to that data that they've captured, they definitely need to have that plan for whatever works for their business. Because not in this industry, but in kind of the other exhibitions that I've run, there have definitely been those conversations, like Nick said at the start. We can get people to come through to the door, and if you tell us about what you're doing at your stand, we can also try to influence people to come through to your stand. Once you capture that data, it's kind of, I can't control how you follow those things up. So as long as you're setting your objectives at the start, and then you're sort of interpreting exactly how that will be implemented at the end when you achieve those objectives, I think that's the most important part. Because I think sometimes some companies can kind of go back and think, we've done the show now, let's all chill, do you know what I mean? And I do get it, because it is a lot in the build-up, but just really making sure that you get onto those leads quickly is going to be the most beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, I had mentioned it before when we were speaking to Tim Benson, but it's over 70% of exhibition leads sometimes get failed to actually be followed up. So that's a crazy stat in terms of you've spent all this money, you've rocked up, you've actually collected the leads, you guys have put it on a platter essentially inside the platform, and then not following up, maybe because, I don't know, the sales guys are back on the road or the marketing team's onto the next thing. That just means that all of this work that we've done, we've set our objective, we've gone to the show, we've managed to actually engage the right people to actually become a lead and then not follow up with them. So I mean, you guys essentially are already looking into the next show. So I'm assuming after Automechanika happens, you guys are in that follow-up process. Do you kind of have a framework or a guide that exhibitors could use in order to follow up with their leads?
I've already started speaking to people about 2027. Like, you probably got an email from me yesterday. Sorry about that.
We did.
And the reason that we do that is because when exhibitors, so everyone can rebook their stand essentially. There's some parameters and whatever that make it flexible for companies to then be able to go back and assess the benefits of the event and then move forward for the 2027 booking. And there's some real benefits in doing that. The main benefit of reaching out to people beforehand is because actually your 3 days that you've dedicated and you've planned your stand and you've, did the marketing like we were just kind of laying out. I don't really want to take that time away from you. I want you to be able to maximize your time at the event. So this is why we reach out before. There will be people also kind of speaking at the event. But I think in terms of what exhibiting companies might be able to take away from what we do as organizers, even though it's not directly relatable, we start planning everything kind of before this year's event has happened. We're already starting planning for the next event, but I'm also already planning wash-up meetings for post-event and putting it in people's diaries, because I'm very aware that as soon as we come back from that time, it's going to be very hard to be able to pin people down. So myself and the team have been reaching out to some key partners, some key associations, and already started putting those meetings in post-event for those wash-ups. So kind of, I know it's a little bit tricky for our exhibitors to be doing that, but maybe what they can do now is put in kind of like call times for, when they're going to follow up those leads and block out their diary now, 5 weeks ahead. And then when it gets to that time, they've already actually got that time dedicated. That's probably the thing that I would say is the best use of my time.
No, I think that's most of it, isn't it? Is that I do doubt that 70% is because people don't know what to do. I feel like if somebody emails you, or if there was just a standard lead that came off the website, how to follow that up. It's probably just the amount of leads that you can collect at an event like this that can maybe overwhelm and you feel like you don't have time for it. So time blocking is probably just a gem of a...
Yeah, I think time blocking, and I think also, if you know that you want to send email campaigns to people following the event, write them now. Like, it's the concept of it is, hi, we saw you at the show. It was great to chat. I'd like to speak to you more. Please can we arrange a time? Do you know what I mean? It doesn't need to be massive, but if that's going to be the best way for you to follow up and start the ball rolling, then have it written before the show.
Sure. Amazing. Well, I have a couple last questions for you guys. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. But in terms of the automotive aftermarket, where do you currently see it sat in terms of the marketing efforts? Are we in the present doing everything that needs to be done, or do you think that we're still quite behind?
So we're doing pretty good. I think obviously there's always room for improvement, but it's not a dire situation really. I mean, I'm sure that Nick would probably have a little bit of things to say.
I find the whole industry fascinating. There's so many different visitor segments to Automechanika Birmingham. If you look at the garages and the body shops and the detailers, in terms of how I'm communicating with them, I'm communicating totally differently. Garages arguably more traditional. Therefore, the elements of sort of direct mail, letters, that type of thing kind of resonates. You look at the body shop detailers, they're all over Instagram and TikTok. So again, you have to sort of pivot and understand how to talk to those guys. You look at the motor factors, they're a bit more sort of LinkedIn friendly, if you like. So, and then if I look at the garages again, they're all over Facebook. So for me, that's why I find the industry so interesting, the campaign, because there's loads of different channels that I need to embrace. I need to do different things. I need to test different formats. And for me, that's really exciting.
I completely agree. There's so much depth to this industry, isn't there, that you don't quite get in others. Yeah,
there's not a broad brush stroke. It's not the machine gun approach. Every single element of my camp has to be segmented and automated to the nth degree.
Yeah, I agree. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for your time, guys. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you at Automechanika.
Perfect. See you in a few weeks.